Now, as morning broke today, news emerged that yet another remarkable elder statesman, Chief Edwin Clarke, has passed away at the age of 97. Over a span of nearly 6 decades, he towered over this country as a lawyer, politician, presidential advisor, senator, Ijaw leader, and former Federal Commissioner for Information. He was quite simply a larger-than-life character, and he made some of the biggest contributions to the Niger Delta in particular and to modern Nigeria in general, agitating and pushing at the boundaries. With his very large personality, he stood in the way of the wrecking ball of oil exploration that was carving itself into the landscape of the Niger Delta, turning it into a scene of massive environmental destruction. His cry became a rallying call for environmentalists from all over the region and beyond, as he demanded justice for ordinary Nigerians. As President Tinubu put it, Chief Clarke's influence was felt across Nigeria's political landscape for nearly 6 decades. So now that his era is ended, what will Nigeria do with his legacy of untiring commitment to national unity and development, having watched him leave this life unfulfilled? Well, to help us look back at the impact of his life less ordinary, I'm joined now in the studio by the Deputy National Chairman of the Pan-Niger Delta Forum, PANDEF, Bassi Ekefre, and by the World Affairs Analyst and former Commissioner in Delta State, Kenny Okolugbo. Gentlemen, thank you very much indeed for coming in. I imagine this is a difficult day for you.
It is.
It is very difficult.
I'll start with you,
It's very, very
Honorable
difficult
Ekefre.
because we went Cross River yesterday on a courtesy visit to the governor and the Bong of Calabar. And then we were anticipating moving from there to Lagos and then to go and commiserate with Banjo. 12 midnight, we got this message that I was gone. And the flight in Calabar was cancelled. The Uyo flight was full. And we were planning to go to Port Harcourt by water and by road to get to Abuja. Fortunately, and by the grace of God, we got a flight from Calabar that morning. And since then, we have been in his house. A lot of people, former president, candidate of the Labour Party, Minister of, as I left, Ambassador Gali, the Minister of Regional Development was there. A lot of people, so he just asked me to come as the Deputy Chairman to speak on his behalf. Yeah.
Well, we appreciate your coming here. And Kenny, of course, he was an ordinary man who did extraordinary things, to put it mildly, which is why everybody is talking about him today.
Yes, and he was my father. You know, funny enough, by the time you left, just when you left, the delegation from the House of Rep also came. We received them. You know, when we say Papa Clarke...
And you were at the house earlier.
Yeah, I was in the house, yes. When we say Papa Clarke is a father, it seems like we were just saying it. But, you know, sometimes we argue with the biological children and, you know, they've come to accept the fact that Papa had a lot of children. You know, it came as a rude shock. It was just a week ago when I visited him with the Chief of Staff to the Senate President, Chinedu Akube, to introduce, I mean, not only to introduce him, but was sent by the Senate President to commiserate with Daddy. And we spent a whole lot of time, you know. He wasn't feeling too well, to be very honest, but we didn't want people to know about that. But we thought he was, you know, Papa is a fighter. We felt he was going to get out of it. And you know, the time before that time was about 2 weeks ago when I saw him. It was as if he knew he was going to go. You know, there's this thing about the Daddy, you know, people don't know it, but even when you bring up a superior argument, even when he will capitulate, he will still tell you why he decided to capitulate. And when he says some things and you're like, oh, Daddy, why are you saying this? I don't think you should say this. He will not look at you and say, is this how you want to take over? Don't you know I'm...
So he likes to hit you right between the eyes.
Don't you know I'm leaving?
Right.
Don't you know somebody has to take over?
Right.
You know, he was the voice of the voiceless. He spoke truth to power. He didn't care whose else was God. And you know, for those of us that were very close to him, you know, we draw inspiration from him because you notice that this was a man that did not care if you were rich, did not care if you were poor.
Right.
As long as you were oppressed, and as long as he had that conviction, Papa will speak about it.
Okay, let me come to you, Honorable
Yeah.
Ekefre there. I mean, one thing that struck me about him was the clarity of his mind.
Yeah, yeah.
At the age of 97. I mean, absolutely extraordinary, wasn't
Yes,
it?
yes.
I mean, but what would you say, for those who may not know him that well, what did he actually stand for? What were his core beliefs?
Yeah, first and foremost, Papa loved Nigeria. I understand that before he was struggling with his coma, going to coma. He was shouting, "I love Nigeria. Nigeria is my country." And he loves Nigeria before he went into coma. Secondly, Papa believes in truthfulness, justice, and unity of this country. He has mentored a lot of us in Niger Delta. So don't be surprised that we that are taking over from Papa will be more drastic than him. We are, because the new set of Panda Vesco is a lot of firebrands. And he mentored and tutored us to become like that. So he's a kind of, he doesn't forget. I remember when I was the pioneer director of project monitoring in Ampadek with the Ekefre. He came into my office one day. I said, normal people will come for their selfish interest. Well, he never came for a selfish interest. He came to look at all the projects in this area and was asking me questions. Why is this man not working? Why is this one not working? When he left, I said, this is a kind of man. This man, everybody that comes into my office wants to personal into my project, our project. But Papa came in to ask for the projects for all the projects for his people. So I immediately knew that any time my boys go for inspection and come back, I will call Papa and say, is it like this? Is it not like that? Truthfully, if it's not like that, I'll send those boys back. That is Papa for you.
And Kenny, he was a strong believer in restructuring, wasn't he? But also he believed passionately in education.
You know, apart from the fact that he was a commissioner of education and he was a commissioner of finance, Papa believed that the fact that restructuring to Papa to him wasn't because he was only from the Niger Delta. He believed that, look, what you are getting from your regions, you should be able to control it and pay to the center. And even when Papa will be taking on to say, look, the governors are misusing the 13% derivation. You know, I served in the Sopadec as a commissioner. And one thing Papa hated was the fact that for anybody he thought was fraudulent, for anybody he thought had, misused those funds, he didn't care. He called them out. But he said, look, leave us to deal with our own people who you thought were shortchanging us. What we are saying now is allow us control our resources. Allow us for true federalism. And a lot of people didn't know that Adebanjo was Papa's best friend. And they both had a lot of influence on each other. And it's shocking that Adebanjo would die just on Friday. Papa would die
really
on
extraordinary.
Monday. It's extraordinary.
It's a real blow to this country.
It's a real blow to this country, and we must be realistic. You see, when Timmy was crying, in the house, tears actually came to my eye, even though Papa had always told us that, look, we should celebrate him. For him, it was celebration of life. He always prepared us for a time like this. But, I was touched because of the kind of things Papa used to say. I drew a lot of inspiration from him, but the only time I disagreed with Papa was on the rivers crisis. I remember that day I was trying to hold a different opinion, and I was strongly holding tenaciously to it. And Papa screamed and said, he's always would agree with me. And he said, look, Ken, I don't understand why you're like this on this rivers crisis. You think I'm fighting this because of Ijo? This was a private discussion. This is what I think about it. This is what I think about it. This is what I think about it. And at the end of the day, Papa will always give you that argument, and he will look at it with facts. People don't know it. That
of course, the facts.
By the time he's addressing the press, they don't know that behind the scene we've had all these debates.
And facts,
very
of course,
few people know it.
Indeed, facts come in because, of course, he was a lawyer, so he had that very sort of logical mind. But he was he a very sociable person, or did he become that way because of the nature of his work?
Well, I was told that I used to be sociable, but
he was very sociable. But let me shock you.
Hang on, let him
but with age now, he has to cool down. And but what he said what the Kenneth said was just true. There are times we want to cool him down on some aspects of the nation. He will shout. Say, I won't, I must say it. That is, he will say it for you. But that is just him.
But in that regard, I mean, he had he was said to have affiliations with quite a lot of militants in the Niger Delta, didn't he?
Well, maybe Kenneth will.
No, I don't think you will say he had affiliation. The militants listened to him.
Yeah.
Because
he became a sort of
a rallying point.
Spokesperson.
No, he wasn't a spokesperson. He was a rallying point for the militants.
Right.
They saw the genuineness in him. They saw the uprightness in him. And so once Papa backs, they all just arrange themselves. Even
they fall in line.
Just basically. God bless you. Just use the exact word. Even when they have issues.
Charles, just a month ago, this South Development Commission, the boys wanted to go out, but we had to calm them down. Papa said we should calm them down.
Because they wanted to do what?
They are not happy that of all these development commissions, only the South that has not been signed by Mr. President.
Right.
So it was we had to use a lot of people to calm down the situations.
You know, Papa always had that thing about him. You know, he had that charisma. Once he calls them, they listen to him. Remember when the Niger Delta Adventures gave that ultimatum? But for Papa, that ultimatum would not have been cancelled. Right. I mean, we can go on and on, but you see, there was this thing about it. It wasn't only because he was the leader of Ijaw Nation. The Middle Belt, you know, in the House today, the Middle Belt were the president was there. In fact, the entire Middle Belt was there because he was also the leader of the Middle Belt and the South. And you know, Adebanjo was his deputy.
Co-leaders,
was his co-leader, but more like his deputy. And you know, the thing about Papa was like, even on that, sometimes when he feels he's ill, he's lying on that sick bed. Just one word from Papa, everybody is running helter-skelter. That tells you that you don't even have to be a commander-in-chief to draw the loyalty of the people. His place the house is like a Mecca. As I speak to you, by the time I went back this evening when I left the National Assembly, the whole place was filled. The National Assembly people were there. People are still coming. And I'm sure by tomorrow, that whole Haile Selassie street will be completely blocked.
That's an important point because, I mean, we've been reading, numerous tributes from everybody, including the President of Nigeria, of course, the President of the Senate, so many people across this country. But I think it's also worth noting that beyond Edwin Clark himself, his brother was the renowned Nigerian poet and author J.P. Clark. That's a famous name, and two famous brothers.
Yeah, and he had a junior brother, Professor Clark,
who is still alive.
Who is alive? He was there today, and the medical doctor in medicine.
But he had a very strong relationship with Professor J.P. Clark. I remember when his son was wedding Ibrahim, J.P. Clark was J.P. Clark was there, and incidentally, I was a spokesman that day because he was wedding the former Umpadec chairman, Ruth Benemisia's daughter, and I'm from Ndokwa, and Opia is from Ndokwa. And I was like, where will I stand now? Will I stand on Papa Clark's side, or will I stand with my people in Ndokwa people? The other side. It was very funny. Papa said, look, I told you to be the spokesman, so remain on my side. You know, that's the kind of person he is. But J.P. Clark gave a whole lot of, in fact, he led the delegation. Not Papa. Now, Papa was there physically, but J.P. Clark was the one that led the delegation for the family, took charge. You know, that's the kind of relationship he had with his brothers, core relationship. And you know, the thing about Papa was that he was always selfless. People don't know it. Papa would rather give you from his own pocket if nobody is coming forth. And if he's fighting a cause, he puts his money into it.
So
he's not going to wait. He's not going to wait for people to come and bring money for him. No. If he believes in that cause, he will fight for it. He will pay lawyers. He will do so much. There's so much to say about him.
So how best do you think Nigerians, beyond just the Niger Delta, should remember him?
Papa should be remembered as a great fighter and a lover of the country who, like you said, want the good for the country, and he has sacrificed a lot for the country. I think Nigerians should pray for his soul to rest in peace, and he's gone to meet his brother, Adebanjo. Those are two great people. When Peter Obi was around today, he said something like Nigeria has lost fighters for the nation. So we told him that fighters are still coming.
And one of the things that people think about when you've got such a great man going away, what would be a fitting tribute to him from Nigeria? How should this country immortalize his memory?
I think they should name a national monument, a real national monument after Papa Clark. If you look at the words of the Senate president today, he said the conscience of the nation. This is exactly what he used, that Nigeria has lost the conscience of the nation. That is because this is who Papa Clark represented. I mean, nobody can deny that fact. Papa Clark will fight for the man in Kafachan. He will fight for the man in Zaria. If the man is oppressed, he will come back to the Niger Delta. He will come back to the Middle Belt. So he wasn't only the leader of Ijaw Nation. He was not only the leader of Pandev. We see him as a leader in Nigeria. And that's, I mean, to fill this vacuum will be very, very difficult.
I was going to say, do you think he might have died, although he didn't come across that way whenever you saw him? He was very ebullient. But, I mean, do you think he might have died a frustrated man because of the, one step forward, two step backwards pace of development in this country?
Yeah, well, I might not say frustrated, but not happy. Because he tried all his best to make sure this country looks good, and he's not been successful. And a crop of people now maybe are probably not making him happy. So he must have died not a happy man, although he says we should rejoice, we should not mourn. But like Debajo said, like, if he dies, that he will be happy. He doesn't know if Nigerians will be happy if he dies. So I think I don't think he would be died a very, very happy person.
And Kenny, your final thoughts on that?
Well, Papa had started believing in the administration of Bola Ahmed Tinubu. He started seeing the positive side, especially with the tax reform. He was very convinced that was the way to go, and started seeing a whole lot of the positive aspects of the regime. But he still felt that the president needed to engage a lot of people more. He felt the president wasn't engaging as much as he should, especially the opposition. But he sort of had that hope and that belief, because you notice in the elections, Padebanjo had a lot of influence on him. They all supported Peter Obi. But he had come to see that, look, Tinubu had inherited a very, terrible economic situation. And you see, typical Papa, when he needed to condemn, he would condemn. When he needed to embrace, he would embrace. But he was ready to give them that chance. And unfortunately, we lost Papa at a very critical period of time.
Okay, and as we said, an ordinary man who did extraordinary things. I want to thank you very much indeed. Kenny Okolugbo is a world affairs analyst and former commissioner in Delta State. And Honorable Bassi Ekefre is the Deputy National Chairman of the Pan-Niger Delta Forum, PANDEF, of which, of course, Chief Clark was a leader.
Yeah. Was a leader, the sole leader.
Indeed. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you for having us.
That's it for this edition of Arise Prime Time. Join us again tomorrow. From me and the entire team here in Abuja and Lagos, bye-bye, and thank you for watching.